then you should be rewarded to do that content. Like, it's like, is that mind blowing? I don't know. I just don't know. Drives me nuts. So there's been a lot of drama here recently in Black Desert Online. The #1 PvP guild left, then the top player, PvP player in the whole game also just quit. And then suddenly the community is creating doomsday posts all over, whether it's on, Reddit or in the in-game chat itself, expressing that there's nothing to do now. Node wars are just bad, and there's just no content to play, and BDO is dying. So it it really makes you wonder what's going on. And there's a lot of factors in play, but with this video, we're going to be looking at this specific topic. Is BDO really suffering from the lack of content? Well, it's a bit more complicated than just saying a simple yes or no. The game does have content, plenty of it, in fact, but there's one aspect, in my opinion, holding it all back, which is the game's core design, which revolves around silver, which, again, really hasn't been an issue until last year when all the open world, PvP changes started to happen. So just keep that in mind. Keep silver in your mind as we dive into the content BDO offers, such as, PvE, PvP, and life skilling. We'll look at each of these to see kind of what they bring to the table, but more importantly, we'll talk about how they connect to silver and whether, they're still relevant in the current state of the game. And then finally, we'll ask that burning question: what's the end game goal here? And just to point out, again, that there are multiple factors why BDO is declining. Either it be that the devs just don't listen to us, or all of the unfulfilled promises from the previous Calpheon and Heidel balls, or there's just no new upcoming fresh content, right? So I'm just looking at one potential factor that is an important core design that covers many aspects of the game, which is silver. So just because I don't talk about the other factors that may be contributing to the downfall doesn't mean that they're not important. So it's just hard. I don't want this video to be, like an hour long, which is why I'm not including everything. But I am thinking about doing kind of a video series on each factor causing the downfall. So stay tuned for that. Also, I'm still recovering from a man cold, so please excuse my voice in this video. It's been like 10 days now, and this cold just will not leave me. But I'm like 90% better. But yeah, just bear with me. But yeah, let's jump right on in. So let's start with life skills. Life skills and BDO are incredibly diverse, right? So whole bunch of different life skills, and I think that's another aspect that makes this game pretty unique. But you have fishing, hunting, cooking, alchemy, training, trading, farming, sailing, bartering, and then you have gathering, and then you have a whole bunch of different life skills in gathering, such as lumbering, fluid collection, hoe gathering, butchering, tanning, mining, water scooping. Apparently that's a thing. Wow. Water scooping. Huh. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I knew you could get water, but I didn't know that was actually what it was called. Anyway, processing. So there's a bunch of different kind of life skills in processing, which you have shaking, grinding, chopping, drying, filtering, heating. So yes, there are a lot of life skills, and it can get pretty complicated. For instance, let's say you want to cook a meal to either make a box out of it to sell to a vendor, or you want to sell on the market. And say you want to, be self-sufficient and get all the materials yourself to maximize your profit, or maybe some of the ingredients are just not on the marketplace. So let's take a look at the Valencia mill, for instance. So let me pull that up here in game. All right, and then let's pull up crafting. And so Valencia mill right here, right? So if we go and we type this in, so we'll see, right, that in order to make the Valencia mill, there's a couple ways of making it, but essentially you need these ingredients here to make the Valencia mill, right? And so let's take a look at this. So this ingredient requires all of these ingredients, right? So let's take a look at this one, for instance. So boom. So in order to make this, you got to have these materials, right? Including snake meat, which you actually have to go and gather that, right, through butchering snakes. And yeah, it's a lot. So let's go back, right? So you figured out that one. Let's do the teff sandwich here. So you need all of these as well, right? Again, all these ingredients are either coming from either the nodes in the game, or you're having to do life skilling to get these. Or I guess you could also buy these off the marketplace. Sometimes you're able to, sometimes you're not. Just kind of depends on how the market's looking and if people are actually playing. So yeah, it can be a lot, right, to keep up with, which is why people use, spreadsheets, which is another reason why people are not even bothered to go this hardcore, because they can just go to a grinding spot for an hour and make really good money while also just turning your brain off and watching a show. But each of these life skills offers a unique way to engage kind of within the world, and it is a vital part of the game. And for some players, life skilling is just what makes BDO stand out to them. So, for instance, cooking and alchemy not only provide consumables that are essential for, combat for either PvE or PvP, but they also tie into the Imperial delivery system where you could sell, crafted goods for a profit to an in-game NPC. And then there's bartering, which allows you to trade goods across the open seas for silver, right? Or farming, where you can grow and harvest or breed crops, which can give you certain ingredients that may be needed for, cooking or alchemy. So yeah, it can get pretty intense, pretty complicated. And a lot of people do like that, but a lot of people don't. So, and another reason why a good amount of people don't really get into it, because there's a catch. There's always a catch, right? Most life skills independently aren't exactly lucrative when it comes to making silver, unless you're combining multiple life skills together and kind of always inspecting the central market prices, right? Now, there is one life skill that you can do all by itself, and it can be pretty close to an actual grinding spot in terms of money making, which is the sniper rifle hunting. However, you need a pretty high mastery and life skill gear to reach that point. So the level of entry is just much greater, right? And I haven't really done sniper rifle hunting honestly in a few months, so I'm assuming it's still pretty viable and it could still make you a lot of money. But overall, yeah, the life skills by itself is just not making you very much money, right? You can do the life skills independently, and you can do it for about an hour, and it can range from maybe like 100 million silver to maybe like around 400 million silver an hour, give or take, which does depend on your mastery level. So many factors into that. But either way, if you compare life skills to like grinding, you can start to see why life skilling, despite its depth, feels really kind of less rewarding. So that's kind of the life skill portion. Then you have PvE. So, the PvE content in BDO is obviously, largely centered around grind spots. And, there are a ton of grind spots, a ton of them from the beginner friendly spots like Polly's Forest and Blood Wolves to the mid-tier spots like Elvia Orc Camp. And then finally, the in-game spots like Dekia Ash Forest, Olin's Valley, and Crypt of Resting Thought. Crypt of Resting Thought. Just to name a few. Oh gosh, I love this cold. So, each spot offers kind of different levels of challenges and rewards, but well, to an extent, challenges. Some of the grinding spots do have some mechanics, but at the end of the day, you're just kind of grinding in a circle. Nothing too challenging about that. Unless you go to like the really in-game gear spots and you don't have the appropriate gear and you're not paying attention, sure, you can get one shot. Like I was at Dekia Ash Forest and I was getting one shot like that. But either way, it could potentially be challenging. But the silver per hour is just really good, right? And at the end of the day, it's all about the silver per hour. So, the most lucrative spots can net you at or above, like 1 billion silver per hour, which is highly dependent on your class, grind speed, drop rate, central market prices. So yeah, grinding spots, top of the top in terms of making money in BDO. Other like PvE content, you have world bosses that usually die in a matter of minutes that can potentially drop rare loot, which can be an easy way to make some extra money if you're lucky. However, most of the time, it's just going to be a waste of time. But if you're a new player, it is kind of a cool aspect to jump in. You see all these players, and it's like, whoa, crazy. But yeah, there's really no mechanics. So, there's also the Land of the Morning Light expansion, which adds, I would say, pretty unique kind of single boss encounters, at least really unique to BDO, with various kind of levels of difficulty that requires you to, for the most part, know the mechanics to defeat that boss. But, the money is not exactly the greatest. It kind of was at the beginning, but now it's really not. And there's also a weekly cap on the rewards, right? And when these came out, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. A lot of people came into the game, especially from like Lost Ark when these came out, and a lot of people really liked them. But now most people don't really do them because the silver, the money, is just not as good. There's not really anything to incentivize to do these bosses. Other PvE content, we have a few dungeons that you can run with a party, but again, there's a weekly cap on them. We did get some news that Land of the Morning Light 2 will be coming out here in September, which will release with new boss encounters with party play. So you have to be kind of in a group to do these. So it will encourage, party play, which is a good thing. And the money to be made probably will be good at the start, most likely. But it will most likely decline over the months, just like the first Land of the Morning Light expansion. So we'll have to wait and see, on that content. But you can see here the trend, right? Players only want to do content that will net them the most silver per hour, which for BDO is going to be at grinding spots, right? You're gonna go grinding at specific grinding spots in the open world. And that's kind of what we have been conditioned to do for so many years. And, the game is centered around that aspect. So I want you to think, how do we make other content like the Land of the Morning Light bosses or the dungeons kind of more relevant? right? Rather than just maybe being centered around silver. So think about that. Think about that. All right, next tier, PvP. So PvP and BDO used to be all about kind of flexing your gear, right? The higher your gear score, the more dominant you were in open world PvP, right? And then sieges and also node wars. Well, guess what? You don't really do PvP content to get your gear because the silver for PvP is like non-existent. It's just not there. So players do PvE content, grinding in a circle, right? Going to a grinding spot, grinding in a circle to get their gear. So, you know, they can do PvP. Now, what is the PvP content, right? So you have sieges, you have node wars, which are supposed to be, you know, an engaging large scale PvP content in the game where guilds kind of just battle it out for control over regions with rewards like, you know, silver payouts and special buffs in that region, which, you know, node wars and sieges has changed over the years where, you know, it used to be where gear made you relevant. And then over the years, they started kind of putting gear caps, making the need to strive to get higher gear not really relevant, which, side note, I think gear caps for tier 1 node wars is fine to allow newer players to experience it sooner, but the other ones, I don't think they should be capped, right? We need a goal here. Also, they did just change node wars, so now it's more of like a king of the hill style, and I think for the most part, the community does not like the change, and they kind of want the old system back. And then you have guild versus guild content, GVGs, which is where like most of the guild dramas happen, right? Guilds declare wars on each other, at least before, over like grinding spots, or, you know, just because they felt like it. But they changed that as well, where now there is no one-sided decks, but both guilds have to agree with, which, you know, this single change a year ago, in my opinion, pretty much destroyed open world PvP, right? And then the other, you know, PvP content is Arena of Solaire, which is awesome. Highly recommend you checking that out. 3v3 arenas. I've been asking for this type of arena system for years, bro. Years. So they finally released it. It's equalized, which I think that's appropriate. I think that's fine. Then you have War of the Roses. I haven't tried that out. And then you have Guild League. I haven't tried that out either, but I hear Guild League's pretty fun. War of the Roses, it's kind of a toss up. But you know, those game modes are unfortunately seasonal, right? So I think Arena of Solaire has been active now for maybe like a month or two, and then they're going to be taking that down, and then Guild Leagues are going to be starting up. I don't like that. Like, just let them all run, right? Why do we have to make it seasonal? Like, come on, PA. Like, just keep it. Keep all of it in there, right? Let the person choose what they want to do. And then you have Red Battlefields, or Red Battlefield. I'm not even gonna even talk about that. Well, I guess I am gonna talk about that, but yeah. I've Red Battlefield. That is pretty much dead. So there you go. But you know, for the most part, other than like maybe the Red Battlefield, sure, these might be fun, but again, they're not very rewarding, right? You're not earning much silver doing these activities. And because the game is so heavily tied to silver and gear progression, it just feels like a waste of time for many players who are focused on gearing up. So again, I ask you the same question as with the, with PvE. How can we make this relevant? How can we make this content relevant? So it's, it's so frustrating that you play an hour of Arena Solaire and you're like making no silver. It like why? It just makes no sense. Like if you enjoy doing that content, then you should be rewarded to do that content. Like it's like, is that mind blowing? I don't know. I just don't know. Drives me nuts. So why is silver so important? Well, historically, it was all about getting the best combat gear, right? You needed that top tier gear to dominate in PvP. And that's why grinding for silver was so essential, right? The more silver you had, the better your gear. And then the better your gear, the more you could own your opponents. But here's where things are getting kind of interesting. Over the past year, which, I kind of already talked about, but BDO's PvP landscape has seen some pretty major changes, right? One of the biggest shifts was the removal of the unrestricted guild declaration system, or guild decks. Back in the day, if someone tried to pull up in your grinding spot, right, you could just slap a guild deck on them and there was no penalty for killing that individual. And, things would escalate pretty fast. Honestly, it led to some wild, chaotic, and honestly, pretty rememberable battles, like those legendary battles there at Star's End, where entire like guilds would clash. It was kind of epic. I'm sure there's a bunch of videos on YouTube where you can just watch, but it was insane. It was unpredictable and it was a blast, and it was great content, right? However, now both guilds have to agree to a declaration, okay? Which, I mean, are you kidding me? Like, it's almost never gonna happen. Never gonna happen. Also the Marnie realm changes, which have been implemented way before the guild deck changes, which, in my opinion, was the start of open world PvP dying. But these changes, along with the karma system adjustments here recently, has just made open world PvP essentially like non-existent, right? Killing someone twice could turn you red, leading to a potential crystal loss or even like gear downgrades. So, this risk just makes PvP less appealing. PvP in the open world, less appealing. And as a result, the content that used to be a huge draw for high gear players has just, lost its edge, right? It's just not there anymore. And it's like, what's the point of grinding for silver, right? And now we have, gear caps on Node Wars, which, again, guess what? Gonna ask the same thing. What's the point of grinding for gear, right? Especially once you get to a certain point, it's like there's just no goal. So, given all this, you have to ask, what's the end game goal now, right? Is it just a never-ending grind for silver to get gear that doesn't have the same impact as it used to? With these changes, is BDO like at a crossroads? Is it trying to transition to something else, right? The content, and again, this is kind of a full circle, right? Silver and content, but the content is there, right? But the question is whether it's relevant or rewarding enough to keep players wanting to do the content. If the PvP scene continues to decline and the focus remains on grinding for silver with really no real alternative in game, we're probably going to see BDO continue to decline, or players are just going to walk away. And we're already seeing that with the Steam charts. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy to see the Steam charts right now. And obviously that's not the best number. It's not the most accurate data, but it's all we really have. And if you look at the chart, it's not looking good. It's not looking good, right? So what's the right solution? I think first they need to add more rewards. Either it be, like for instance, for like life skills, more silver to be a little bit more appealing to do that content, or more like cosmetic options and more special titles, right? Anything to incentivize the content. Also, just give us more silver with PvP content. Like, it's not that hard to do. It's not that hard to do in general, right? Like, if I want to do 1 hour of Arena of Solaire, then I should make like at least maybe 400 million an hour minimum, especially with now silver becoming more irrelevant with all the gear caps, right? But hey, that's just my perspective. Maybe the Land of the Morning Light 2 expansion will solve everything. Right? I mean, they're bringing bosses that involve group play, which a lot of people have been asking for. And they expressed that they may add 1v1s to Arena of Solaire, which would be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool. But will it solve it? I don't know. Right? There's so many factors into the downfall of BDO. And this is just kind of one factor of many factors. Okay? So, content. There's plenty of content in BDO. But is it relevant? And how do we make it more relevant? Right? If BDO is trying to transition where silver is not to be as important, then what are other things that they can do to incentivize that content? But hey, I'm curious to hear what you all think. Is BDO really on the decline, or are we all just going crazy? Is the content in BDO actually worth doing? How can we fix the content? Right? So drop your thoughts in the comments. But hey, I will see you in the next video. Peace.
Sunsets on black desert sky. It's just you and I.